Hi, this is Scott again. Welcome to Roadable Driver's Garage. As I'm in the garage today, it's a cold, sunny, cloudy fall Sunday, as you can see outside. It's like in the 40s right now. Typical fall day for Nebraska. I'm in the garage. Going back to the project, the 72 Chevelle. I had originally done all these videos back in May and June before I started prepping the truck for Rocky Mountain Race Week when I was working on that Chevelle for a friend. And I had planned to end the videos with, you know, street views, running down the highway, and doing a couple of burnouts and stuff with it. And none of those videos came out. It was either too dark, too windy, you couldn't hear the car, all you could hear was the wind. It was just a disaster, so I got mad and left them alone for all this time. But this video that I have here for part 2 actually shows what I did to get the car up and running again and making it drivable. And it survived the 500-mile drive to Denver. Just watch along and you'll see what I did. It was a little bit of a challenge here and there. Brakes weren't cooperating. I had some issues with it. And then you'll see what we did to land on that. And then I'll show you what I'm going to be doing on this one in an upcoming video here. The truck behind me, my 67 GMC. It's also known as Project Hay Hauler. Just let me know what you think and put some comments in there. And look for another video I'm just going to be posting up here in a little bit. I just posted a video that is of two 70 Chevelle SS 396 cars that were just restored by a friend of mine who owns a place called the Muscle Car Factory here in Kearney, Nebraska, and he does amazing work. I got a couple of videos of them running together and idling. Ones, they're not perfectly stock, but man, they look great. Yeah, enjoy. Talk to you soon. I pulled the water pump off. I thought when I took the belts off, it would be really noticeable and loose because the pulley was wobbling, but get this thing to stay still for a second. The only thing that's moving, that looks bent, is the flange. It's like slightly bent. It's weird. I got the water pump off, and let's see. It's hard to see on the camera. Oh well. Here's something weird. It had a 4-bladed fan. Never seen a 4-bladed fan on an air conditioner car from the 70s. I doubt this is original. This looks like it's something that came off of like a 60s Chevy, like a pickup truck with no AC. But I think I got some 5 blades or 6-blade fans over here, 7 blades. We're gonna get one of those and put it on instead. While we're waiting on the gaskets and the water pump paint to dry, I decided to take a look at the suffix code on this engine. You can see it there. TYZ. I looked that up. You can look it up on like 68ss.com. That's nastyz28.com is the most common one. But that says it's a 1975 350 4-barrel engine that came out of a pickup truck. So that's what this engine was originally. I don't know if it's a 350 4-bolt main or not. Not that it really matters. But you can see it there. You can still see part of the original truck's VIN number there. There. VO920 TYZ. Anyway, we got the water pump painted. And I'm about to put it on. I put some gasket sealant around on the water pump itself, and I got thread sealer on all the bolts You don't normally have to put them on all the bolts, but I do, just in case, because the bolts do go into the water jacket, especially the lower ones. The upper ones aren't as much as necessary, but I just want to, I just do to make sure I don't have an issue. And the water pump came out nice. This is actually a nice water pump. It was $58 from the store. It was the upgraded one. Okay, we got the water pump in. If you want to use the torque wrench is about 35 pounds on the 3/8 bolts, holding the four water pump bolts in. This is the heater hose fitting that goes in the top. I use liquid Teflon thread sealer. I don't use tape anymore on anything. Just works better. It's much easier to put that in and take that out while the water pump is bolted to the engine. Gives you a lot more leverage on it instead of trying to hold the water pump in one hand and give it a good on the wrench or a socket. I'm going to use a big socket, deep socket, and a 1/2-inch drive ratchet on it to tighten it up. Well, I got her up and running. The new water pump is in, not wobbling. Somebody already put an alternator on it. The battery starter, the battery cables are in. It's running really good. Sounds really good. Just wait for her to get up to temp so I can refill up the radiator. She sounds good. Carburetor needs a little more adjustment. It probably needs a power valve. Really smooth. So the generator light glows a little bit. It's got a new alternator on there, and hooks up 14.5 volts. So there's nothing wrong with the alternator. This may be a different style alternator that was on this car originally. May have had an external regulated alternator on it. Still waiting on the radiator to fill up. Thermostat to open. Thermostat open. Oh yeah, she's leaking oil pretty good. Look at that down there. Appears to be coming from the oil pressure sitting unit. Yeah, oil pressure sitting unit's leaking everywhere. Today we're going to be taking a look at the drum brakes first before we do the master cylinder. This one actually feels like it's adjusted correctly, but I just want to double check to make sure because it's sat for over a year. The plates have been expired for a year, and the pedal goes to the floor, so I want to double check the wheel cylinders as well, make sure they're not leaking everywhere, and then make sure there's like some meat on the shoes left. We're not going to be driving on drums for a long time. I guess they're going to switch it over to disc brakes pretty soon, and so we just need to make a single road trip with safe drums. So we'll see what we need. We'll replace what is necessary and leave what doesn't need to be replaced. As you can see on the front brake, the shoes are pretty well worn. But it looks like they replaced all the hardware. The springs are all got the paint on them still. and even the retainer clips. They were all replaced the last time they did the shoes. Wheel cylinders aren't leaking. Since this car is going to get disc brakes, we're going to leave the shoes on there because it's only going to get a couple more thousand miles of driving on it before all this gets trashed anyways. Still has the original ball joints on it, at least the upper ones. Can you see that still has the rivets on it? Otherwise, the replacement ones would have bolts. But they're in good shape, so we're going to leave them alone for right now. And the rear brakes are the same way. Look at that. New hardware on it. And same thing. Shoes are worn. We're just going to readjust them and drive it. I think he's going to put a 9-inch in this thing. For what they're doing. They're big plans for this car. We'll see what happens, but anyway, we'll get it to him and he can decide what he wants to do with that. Right now I'm repacking the bearings on the front drums, the front hubs actually, which actually include the drums. I got the outer bearing still in there, I haven't done it yet. I did the rear bearing. You have to take the seal out to get to the rear bearing. Here's the old seal. And the grease was pretty gross. It looked like somebody just put some grease on the outer bearing right behind the cap. And this grease that's been in the bearings. The bearings were still good. And the bearings were still good, except they just had really old grease in them. If there's somebody would have kept driving them on it like that for a long period of time, they would have destroyed the bearings eventually. And the way to do this is you just put a piece of wood like that, and then you just that evens out the pressure across the seal. And you just hit it with a hammer and tap it in. See, a little bit of tapping. It's in there, nice and even. No fighting with it. And okay, you can see in there is the bearing. Alright, and you hooked up the grease gun to the grease fitting on top, and you just keep squeezing it till it comes out. You can see how it's just pushing out really nasty black grease in there. That's what was in the bearing. You want to push all that crap out until you get to good, nice clean grease coming out. And I'll show you here once I get this thing open. Okay, you can see all the dirty ass grease that came out of the bearing, and how the grease is now filled completely. This is the outer bearing. On the inner bearing, I forgot to tell you that I actually add a lot extra grease inside the race with out of that tub. That way, it's got plenty. When I do the front, when I put this on the front, I'll do the same on the front as well, on the outer spindle. That way, there's no shortage of grease and it won't get hot. Because the worst thing you can do for a bearing is get it hot. It can actually break the spindle, get the spindle so hot it actually snaps, or it just tears. The bearing seizes up and tears into the spindle and just rips it to shreds, and you have to replace the spindle, which sucks. Look at you take the bearing cap cover off, and you go, oh, looks like they repacked the bearings recently. Well, from the other side, it doesn't look like all they did was put grease here and didn't repack the bearings at all, because the grease looked like it was 100 years old on the other side. So we'll see what happens. The other side looked just like this when I took it off. I went, oh, cool, they repacked the bearings. Well, good thing I checked. Okay, so I got into the rear end here just to check it out. I wanted to curious what the gear was on it. And you can either count all the teeth on the pinion and on the gear, or you can go right to the gear here, rotate it around. The last two numbers here, which is, it's hard to see, 7 and a 71, that's the date, July 71. And up here, can you see that? It's a 15. Let me get the light just right. 15 and a 41. 15 is the teeth on the pinion. 41 is the teeth on the ring gear. Divide 15 into 41 and you get 2.73. Also, you want to know if it's a steep gear, the pinion is not going to be massive like that. It's going to be small. So if you have a huge ring gear, which is really thick here, right? It's really thick there, and the pinion is tiny compared to that one, then you're going to have a steeper gear. The other way, hang on one second. I'm going to rotate this around. Where's my screwdriver? Okay. Okay, see now the opening's there. Get my light back going up there. See? There would be, if this was a posi, you'd have two plates with two little springs in there. When all you see is the spider gears and the center pinion pin holding the spider gears in there and the C-clips, that means it's a non-posi. So if you run out of spot a posi in it really quickly, in this opening would be a steel plate here, and then two springs holding each the springs, the plates open. This is probably, for 72 Chevelle, this is stock turbo 350, stock gears with 273 with an open rear. This is stock. So nobody added anything in the last 40 years, unfortunately. Darn. Alright, we'll move on. Oh look, old school hot rodding. A rubber spring separator there, and then farther up, which I didn't see when the wheels were on, is the old bolt-in spring separator. Can you see it back in there? Old way of jacking up your car instead of using air shocks. He's got regular shocks on the back. These are practically brand new, it looks like. You can see them better over there. See the rubber isolator on the bottom, a spring separator on the bottom. So that was, the top one wasn't enough, so they went to the rubber one as well. Yeah, old school hot rodding here. Stuff I did back in the 80s when I was in high school. Unbelievably, it rides pretty decently with this crap in there. But nowadays you can buy a set of springs, station wagon springs for $100, so why do this? But anyway, on to the brakes. I'm going to be putting in a new master cylinder. There's the new master cylinder. These little hoses came with the master cylinder I got years ago with several different sized fittings. It's a great little kit because you can bench bleed it. Now there's two ways to do it. You have to bleed the master cylinder before you connect it to the brakes. Now you can either do it on a bench in a vise like this, or you can actually put it on the car first, which I've done many times, and do the same thing. It's just that you gotta get all the bubbles out of it. So you fill it with fluid. And I've already benched this, bled this, but you'll see it here. And you want to just kind of keep nice and steady pressure until there's no more air bubbles being pushed out by the master cylinder out through these hoses and back in. Crescent wrench is just holding the hoses in because I'm doing this one-handed. But if you don't bench bleed your master cylinder, you're never going to have good brakes. So you got to do this. Putting this on without doing this is no better than using a master cylinder that's bad, okay? And if you can't get it to bench bleed ever, if it just keeps pushing bubbles and bubbles and bubbles forever and ever, take it back, it's defective. I've had that happen on my last master cylinder. So, watch one more time. I'm going to push it in with the screwdriver in the back, right back here. See, I'm just using a Phillips head. One more time. And see, I just got almost all the bubbles out of it already. See? There we go. Found the source of the failure on this master cylinder. It wasn't just the sleeve, you know, the O-rings in the sleeve. It was actually leaking right out of the back. It's all soaking wet. There's actually was brake fluid on the floor in the car. Thankfully, the car doesn't have carpet. Otherwise, it'd have some brake fluid smelling carpet forever. Now I just got to bleed the new master cylinder. It's in. All in. Hopefully it doesn't leak. I just got to bleed it, and I'll bleed the brakes now. So we have an update. Got a new master cylinder in. The original one I got was defective. This one's for disc brakes, but they work for drums. And I couldn't get it to bleed. So, because there was so much air in the line, so we had to borrow a friend's power bleeder over there on the floor. That really came in handy. Holly's fixed. It had a big hesitation. They had a giant squirter on it. For 35 size squirter for a 350 is way too big, and the only thing you needed was a smaller squirter and the accelerator pump adjusted correctly, so it didn't have any hesitation when you hit the throttle. Right now we're pulling the oil pressure sending unit out. As you can see, it's covered in oil on the top. Oil is coming out of it when it runs, which means that the seal is broken on it around the outside here, or it's cracked and it's just bleaking oil. There's oil all over the back of the transmission and the engine because of it. So we're replacing this one. It's just for a dummy light, but hey, whatever works. And then we're pretty much done. Oh yeah, we had to get different wheels for the front. Tried to fix the air leaking out of the beads. Well, that was only the beginning of the problem. The wheels down here. The wheels, these old slots. You gotta be careful when you're using these old slots. This one was the good one. But if you look closely, let me get the you can see where it starts to crack. It's cracking right there and there, and on the back it's chunking out where the lug nuts go in, and that is not good. That is a problem. After a while, you can actually have this whole center part break out of the wheel, and that's no fun when that happens on the freeway. So this wheel is pretty much junk. I'll polish it up and hang it with my Kragers on the wall for wall art. This one could make a nice spare tire wheel, I guess. It's not cracked yet. Somebody was putting on these wheels with an impact wrench. You putting on aluminum wheels like this with an impact wrench, you need to be hitting the head with your impact wrench. Well, we got the engine running good. Couple of things. It's got a tiny bit of miss. There's a couple of weird things going on with this one. The balancer, when you put the timing light on the balancer, it's not on the timing mark. It's straight up at 12 o'clock. Now, it can either mean two things. A, the balancer's out of weight moved, or B, this is a later model 350. 75 shouldn't have a later, but it might have a later model balancer on it from like the late 70s, early 80s, where they had the timing pointer straight up and down behind the water pump, which was a stupid place for it. Seen that a lot. So I don't know if I'm going to mess with the timing much. I might just leave it alone. I could try to adjust it a little bit, see if I can get a little more time advance out of it, see if I can get that miss out of it. That not the miss, but the little bit of hesitation. And if that works, and I'm not knocking and pinging, then I think I'll be okay. I'm not going to advance it much. As you can see, they got that thing smashed against the firewall, and then around on this side, you got maybe a few degrees before the vacuum pot hits the intake manifold for advancing the timing, because you go counterclockwise, which is this way, and that will hit, go that way, and the pot's going to hit it. I might try a little bit of extra timing. That's if my adjustment I just made to the accelerator pump linkage doesn't solve it. We'll give it a shot, see what happens. Added a bit of more pipe to it. It's kind of thrown together, but hey, this will keep it from gassing me out. Polished the rear wheels and painted the front ones.